Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadhyasya yato niviyad itaratas charte swavigyaswarat.
Janmadhyasya yatam vayaditaratas chate swavigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adhikavaye Muyanti Yat Surayaha.
Tejo Varimadam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomisha.
Tejo Varimrita Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomisha.
Dhamna Swena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
Dhamna Swena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi.
O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Sri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality, Godhead.
O all-pervading personality of
I
Godhead.
offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Sri Krishna because the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all
the
causes.
Creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
The creation, sustenance, destruction of manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he's independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
Of water seen in fire or land seen on water.
Of water seen in fire or land seen in water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Temporarily manifested by reactions to the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are unreal.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Who is eternally existent in the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravota.
Dharma projita kaitravota.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Paramo nirmatsaranam satam.
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Vedam vastavam astra vastu.
Shivadam tapa trayon mulanam.
Shivadam tapo trayon mulanam.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite.
Kim va parir Ishwaraha.
Kim va parir Ishwaraha.
Sadya Hridi Avrutyate Tra.
Sadya Avrutyate Avrutyate Tra.
Krite bihi sususabhistakshanat.
Krite bihi sususabhistakshanat.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavad Purana propounds the highest truth.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully and pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
Is sufficient in itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scriptures?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam.
By this culture of knowledge.
By this culture of knowledge.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
The Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam.
Sukhamukad amrita dravya samyatam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Pibata Bhagavatam rasam alayam.
Muhur aho rasika bhavibhavukaha.
Muhur aho rasika bhavibhavukaha.
O expert and thoughtful men relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful men relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
The mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desire to read the Vedic literatures.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all.
Although its nectarine juice was already relishable for all.
Including liberated souls.
Including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Punya Shravana Kirtanam
Hridyantaksto hi abhadrani
Vidyantasto Hiya Bhadrani
Vidunati Srihitsatam.
Vidunati Surisata.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or
literature,
to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from him directly from the Bhagavad Gita,
is itself righteous activity.
this is a righteous activity.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
And for who hears about
Lord
Krishna,
Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as a best-wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body constantly engaged in hearing of him.
Nastapresu bhadresu
Nasta Praisha Bhadrishu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nitam Bhagavata Seva
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistiki.
Bhakti Vaistiki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the devotees,
and from the
he
devotees,
becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastumo bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadayaschaye
cheta etairenavidam
Cheta Iteranabhidam
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Stitam Sadve Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional service,
one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes free from the modes of passion of ignorance,
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam pranasamanasu
Vampanastamanasu
Bhagavat Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata
Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When all these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of
becomes
pure goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis
Vidyate Hridaya Granti
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samshaya
Shiyante Chasya Karmani
Chidyante Chasya Karmani
Drista Evat Manishware.
Drista Evatmaneshwari.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the hardness of the material
and
affection,
enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Samsham from Agrama,
understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotees, Krishna consciousness,
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Srimad Bhagvatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, verse number 27. Nayatra soko najara namrityur
Na yatra shoko na jara na mrityo
natir nachav chodvega rite kutaschit
narti chacho dvega te kutachit
yachit tato da kripayani dam vidam
yachitato da kripayani dam vidam
duranta dukkha prabhavanu darsana.
duranta dukha prabhavanu darshanat.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. In the planet of Satyaloka, there is neither bereavement, nor old age, nor death. There is no pain of any kind, and therefore there are no anxieties, save that sometimes, due to consciousness, there is a feeling of compassion for those unaware of the process of devotional service, who are subjected to unsurpassable miseries in the material world. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Foolish men of materialistic temperament do not take advantage of successive authorized knowledge. The Vedic knowledge is authorized and is acquired not by experiment, but by authentic statements of the Vedic literatures explained by bona fide authorities. Simply by becoming an academic scholar, one cannot understand the Vedic statements. One has to approach the real authority who has received the Vedic knowledge by disciplic succession and as clearly explained in the Bhagavad Gita 4.2. Lord Krishna affirmed that the system of knowledge, as explained in the Bhagavad Gita, was explained to the sun god, and the knowledge descended by disciplic succession from the sun god to his son Manu, and from Manu to King Ikshvaku, the forefather of Lord Ramachandra. And thus the system of knowledge was explained down the line of great sages, one after another. But in due course of time, the authorized succession was broken, and therefore, just to reestablish the true spirit of the knowledge, the Lord again explained the same knowledge to Arjuna, who was a bona fide candidate for understanding due to his being a pure devotee of the Lord. Our Bhagavad Gita, as it was understood by Arjuna, is also explained. Bhagavad Gita 10.12 to 13. But there are many foolish men who do not follow in the footsteps of Arjuna in understanding the spirit of Bhagavad Gita. They create instead their own interpretations, which are as foolish as they themselves, and thereby only help to put a stumbling block on the path of real understanding, misdirecting the innocent followers who are less intelligent, or the Sudras. It is said that one should become a Brahmana before one can understand the Vedic statements. And this stricture is as important as the stricture that no one shall become a lawyer who has not qualified himself as a graduate. Such a stricture is not an impediment in the path of progress for anyone and everyone, but it is necessary for unqualified understanding of a particular science. Vedic knowledge is misinterpreted by those who are not qualified brahmanas. A qualified brahmana is one who has undergone strict training under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. The Vedic wisdom guides us to understanding our relation with the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and to acting accordingly in order to achieve the desired result of returning home back to Godhead. But materialistic men do not understand this. They want to make a plan to become happy in a place where there is no happiness. They want to make a plan to become happy in a place where there is no happiness. For false happiness, they try to reach other planets either by Vedic rituals or by spacecraft. But they should know for certain that any amount of materialistic adjustment for becoming happy in a place which is meant for distress cannot benefit the unguided man, because, after all, the whole universe with all its paraphernalia will come to an end after a certain period. Then all plans of materialistic happiness will automatically come to an end. The intelligent person therefore makes a plan to return home back to Godhead. Such an intelligent person surpasses all the pangs of material existence, like birth, death, disease, and old age. He is actually happy because he has no anxieties of material existence. But as a compassionate sympathizer, he feels unhappiness for the suffering materialistic men, and thus he occasionally comes before the materialistic man to teach them the necessity of going back to Godhead. All the bona fide acharyas preach this truth of returning home back to Godhead and warn men not to make a false plan for happiness in a place where happiness is only a myth. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this talks to what we were explaining yesterday near the end of the class about the sense of duty of a devotee. This is a major theme of the entire Srimad Bhagvatam. And it's explained by Krishna, or it's also explained in depth in the Srimad Bhagvatam, where, let's see, where is that? In the last chapter, the first canto, So it's Canto 1, Chapter 19, verse number 24. And this verse says, O trustworthy Brahmanas, I now ask you about my immediate duty. Please, after proper deliberation, tell me of the unalloyed duty of everyone in all circumstances, and specifically of those who are just about to die. So, this is a big subject. We started discussing it yesterday, and we read the verse in the first canto, 7th chapter, 40th verse. And that one said, although Krishna, who was examining Arjuna in religion, encouraged Arjuna to kill the son of Dronacharya, a great soul, did not like the idea of killing him. Arjuna, a great soul, did not like the idea of killing him, although Aswatthama was a heinous murderer of Arjuna's family members. So, what's being said here? In the purport, Prabhupada says, Arjuna was a great soul, undoubtedly, which is proved here also. He is encouraged herein personally by the Lord to kill the son of Drona. But Arjuna considers that the son of his great teacher should be spared, for he happens to be the son of Dronacharya, even though he is an unworthy son, having done all sorts of heinous acts whimsically for no one's benefit. So he's the son of Arjuna's guru, who taught him the military art. Lord Shri Krishna encouraged Arjuna outwardly just to test Arjuna's sense of duty. It is not that Arjuna was incomplete in the sense of his duty, nor was Lord Shri Krishna unaware of Arjuna's sense of duty. But Lord Shri Krishna put to test many of his pure devotees just to magnify the sense of duty. The gopis were put to such tests as well. April-2021 Maharaj was also put to such a test. All pure devotees come out successful in respective tests by the Lord. So, we see here that Krishna will test his devotees, his pure devotees, to see what their sense of duty is. And the purpose is to magnify the sense of duty of the devotees. So this is further explained in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Srimad Bhagvatam, where it says, the first canto, chapters. Let's see, first canto, chapter 2, in a series of verses, where it says, Dharma swanastitak pumsa visvaksena katasuyad yad not pada yad yadi ratim shrama evahi kevalam. The occupational activities a man performs according to his own position are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction from the message of the personality of Godhead. So here we see that people who don't like to hear classes, who don't come to classes, and who are more concerned about their maintenance and daily family duties and things like that, and ignore the responsibility of regular hearing and chanting, they'll never understand Krishna consciousness. It doesn't matter if they chant some rounds, it doesn't matter if they're initiated or not initiated. This hearing and chanting, quality hearing and chanting, is absolutely necessary every day. So, Prabhupada writes, there are different occupational activities in terms of man's different conceptions of life. To the gross materialist who cannot see anything beyond the gross material body, there's nothing beyond the senses. Therefore, his occupational activities are limited to concentrated and extended selfishness. Concentrated selfishness centers around the personal body. This is generally seen amongst the lower animals. Extended selfishness is manifested in human society and centers around the family, society, community, nation, and world with a view to gross bodily comfort. Above these gross materialists are the mental speculators who hover aloft on the mental spheres, and their occupational duties involve making poetry and philosophy or propagating some ism with the same aim of selfishness limited to the body and the mind. But above the body and mind is the dormant spirit soul, whose absence from the body makes the whole range of bodily and mental selfishness completely null and void, but less intelligent people have no information of the needs of the spirit soul. So we see that the primary duty of a person is not serving the needs of the body, it's serving the soul, the jiva. And the jiva is, by constitutional position, the eternal servant of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So most people, I would say 99% of people in the world are unaware of what their primary duty in life is. Therefore, they go about merrily wasting their time in running after sense gratification and money and surrounding themselves with all kinds of gadgets and instruments for sense gratification, and they never come to the realization of what is their primary duty in life. Then also it says, Dharmasya hi apavaragasya narto riteo kalpate nartasya dharma kantikasya kamo labhayas hi smrita. All occupational engagements are certainly meant for ultimate liberation. They should never be performed for material gain. Furthermore, according to sages, one who is engaged in the ultimate occupational service should never use material gain to cultivate sense gratification. Well, but that's what everybody's doing. They're using material gain for their own sense gratification. And Prabhupada says the general tendency of any ordinary man in any part of the world is to gain some material profit in exchange for religious or any other occupational service. In other words, they'll engage in religious ritual performances for sense gratification, for increasing their sense gratification or protecting their sense gratification, or for getting better sense gratification after death by being elevated to the heavenly planets. Why? So even in the Vedic literatures, for all sorts of religious performances, an allurement of material gain is offered. And most people are attracted by such allurements or blessings of religiosity. Yeah, there's whole sections of the Vedas where people are offered all kinds of material gain if they chant this mantra or do this ritual, etc. So they're attracted to this because material gain can enable one to fulfill these material desires, which in turn satisfy sense gratification. This cycle of occupational engagements includes so-called religiosity followed by material gain, and the material gain followed by fulfillment of desires. Sense gratification is the general way for all sorts of fully occupied men. But in the statement of Sutta Goswami, as per the verdict of Srimad Bhagvatam, this is nullified by the present sloka. One should not engage himself in any sort of occupational service for material gain only, nor should material gain be utilized for sense gratification. How material gain should be utilized is described as follows. Kamasya nindriya pritir labo jivata yavata, jivasya tattva jigyasa, narto yascheha karma bihi. Life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation, since a human being is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So here, now it's really focusing on what is our primary duty in life. We should engage in Krishna's service without any anxiety over gain or safety, or gain and protection, and we should completely depend on Krishna's mercy. Now, a great example of this is the present state of the COVID virus, or the Chinese virus, which is killing people and infecting and killing people at an amazing rate in India. People are writing me from India saying, please pray for me. People all around me, people are sick and dying. And I'm just praying that I don't get sick. Right? So we see how dire the situation has become in India. And the question is, why is it more severe in India than in the West? Anybody have an idea? Have any idea why? No.
I can guess, but
What?
I can guess, but I don't know.
Okay. Well, the answer is because India is the land of Dharma. Krishna was there, Rama was there, so many saints were there. Vyasa is there right now, writing the Vedas for the next age. The next age will be Satya Yuga. So, in such a holy place, for the people living there to engage in horrible, sinful activities, the reaction is much more severe than here, where it's expected that people are going to be engaged in horrible, sinful activities because they're separated by distance and by culture from the Vedic culture. But in India, the land of Dharma, and they are engaging in horrendous sinful activity, meat eating, intoxication, illicit sex, gambling, and doing all kinds of horrible things. Therefore, the reaction is much more severe. Do the Indians realize this? No, they don't realize it. They don't see the correlation between meat eating, illicit sex, gambling, and intoxication. They don't see the correlation. Maybe some people do, but very few see it. Therefore, the reaction, just like if you commit an offense in Vrindavan, the reaction is 1,000 times more severe than in the West. And if you perform devotional service in Vrindavan, the effect is 1,000 times better than anywhere else. So that's a holy place. But there are many holy places in India. There's Vrindavan, there's Benares, there's Mayapur, there's Srirangam, there's so many places, holy places. So because people are committing so many sinful reactions, the effect is much greater than in the West. And we're seeing it right now. It's a real pandemic in India. Every day, over 350,000 people are being infected with COVID. That's, a huge number of people, right? Of course, the population is much greater in India than most other places, but still, China has a bigger population in India. They don't have such, at least they're not reporting maybe how many people are getting infected, but it's definitely not as much as India. So when things happen like this, we have to ask ourselves, why is it happening? Why particularly India, the land of Dharma, such terrible havoc is being wrought by the virus. Okay, so here it says, the completely bewildered material civilization is wrongly directed towards the fulfillment of desires and sense gratification. In such civilization, in all spheres of life, the ultimate end is sense gratification. In politics, social service, altruism, philanthropy, and ultimately in religion, or even in salvation, the very same tint of sense gratification is ever increasingly predominant. In the political field, the leaders of men fight with one another to fulfill their personal sense gratification. The voters adore the so-called leaders only when they promise sense gratification. As soon as the voters are dissatisfied in their own sense gratification, they dethrone the leaders. The leaders must always disappoint the voters by not satisfying their senses. The same is applicable in all other fields. No one is serious about the problems of life. Even those who are on the path of salvation desire to become one with the absolute truth and desire to commit spiritual suicide for sense gratification. But the Bhagavatam says that one should not live for sense gratification. One should satisfy the senses only in so much as required for self-preservation and not for sense gratification. Because the body is made of senses which also require a certain amount of satisfaction, there are regulative directions for satisfaction of such senses, but the senses are not meant for unrestricted enjoyment. For example, marriage or the combination of a man with a woman is necessary for progeny, meaning for children, but it is not meant for sense enjoyment. In the absence of voluntary restraint, there's propaganda for family planning, but foolish men do not know that family planning is automatically executed as soon as there is search for the absolute truth. So you see, in India, there's tremendous amount of abortion also of children, and there's also cow killing. So what do you expect? And then the effect can be 1,000 times more severe than in the West, because it's the land of Dharma. It's not a place where people should be wholesale engaged in sense gratification and demoniac life. Seekers of the absolute truth are never allured by unnecessary engagements in sense gratification, because the serious students seeking the absolute truth are always overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth. Do you feel, ask yourself this question, do you feel overwhelmed with the work of researching the truth? This is a very wonderful point. Overwhelmed in the search for the truth means that it's your primary focus in life. And you realize that whatever you know is nothing compared to what there is to know about Krishna. Therefore, you don't want to waste 1 second of your life focusing on things that are not connected to Krishna. However, you can make everything in your life connected to Krishna. That's called Krishna consciousness. Your work, the fruit of your work, your spare time, all these things can be used in the service of Krishna. And if you're not sure how to do it, you ask Siksha or Diksha gurus, and they'll tell you how to do it. That's called the art of work, where every action you perform is for the pleasure of the Lord. So, therefore, in every sphere of life, therefore, the ultimate end must be seeking after the absolute truth, and that sort of engagement will make one happy, because he will be less engaged in varieties of sense gratification. And what that absolute truth is explained in the follows. Well, as follows. Well, we want to continue with this principle that Prabhupada is talking about, and that is the principle of the sense of duty. And this is explained in the Canto 1, Chapter 18, verse number 11. So, what does it say? It's a short purport, but it has a lot of deep meaning. So the sages are speaking to Sukadeva Goswami, and they say, the good sages say, "O grave Sutta Goswami, may you live many years and have eternal fame, for you are speaking very nicely about the activities of Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. This is just like nectar for mortal beings like us." And in the purport, Prabhupada says, when we hear about the transcendental qualities and activities of the personality of Godhead, we may always remember what has been spoken by the Lord himself. In the Bhagavad Gita 4.9, his acts, that's 4.9, Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evan Myoveti Tatvata Tyakvadeham Punarjanma Naiti Mameti Swarjana. Whoever knows the mysterious nature of Krishna's appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take birth again, but goes back to Godhead. That's how powerful knowledge of Krishna is. And that's why we should give a premium to knowing about Krishna, because it's the only thing that can save us from taking birth again in the material world. So it says, his acts, or Krishna's acts, even when he acts in human society, are all transcendental, for they are all accentuated by the spiritual energy of the Lord, which is distinguished from his material energy. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, such acts are called divyam. This means that he does not act or take his birth like an ordinary living being under the custody of material energy, nor is his body material or changeable like that of ordinary living beings. And one who understands this fact, either from the Lord or from authorized sources, is not reborn after leaving the present material body. Such an enlightened soul is admitted into the spiritual realm of the Lord and engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, the more we hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord, as they are stated in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagvatam, the more we can know about his transcendental nature and thus make definite progress on the path back to Godhead. Well, here it is. This is the main point of life. This should be our primary duty, this hearing and chanting, so that we can always be thinking of Krishna and put that into actuality by offering the result of all our activities to Krishna. Okay, so then the concept of this amplifying this sense of duty is most, let's say, clearly understood when we're put into difficulties. When we're put into difficulties, just like so many people are put into difficulty right now in India, but everybody's put into difficulty in the material world. There's no safe haven here. This birth, death, old age, and disease is present everywhere. And not only that, the force of time, I am the destroyer of worlds, Krishna says, is always pressuring us. And we're experiencing time as past, present, and future, which puts us in deep anxiety. And then there are the three modes of material nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance, that are giving us trouble all the time. And then there are the threefold miseries, adhyatma, adhibhotika, adhidevika, that give us miseries of this body, miseries caused by other persons and things and living entities, and then miseries caused by natural disasters. And then there's lust, anger, greed, envy, madness, and illusion that's giving us trouble all the time. And then there's eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. It's problems. You eat, sometimes you overeat, you get an upset stomach, gives you a headache, you get constipated, and you have headache and all these things, bloating, and so forth. And then sleeping, some people sleep too much, some people can't sleep enough. There's always a problem. Mating is always a problem. I don't want to get into all the details of it, but it is a problem. And defending is always difficult for people. And then there's birth, death, old age, and disease. So we see all these things are limiting us, are conditioning us, and it's just these are just sources of problems. So in all that, there's a test. What is the test? Bhakti parisanubhava viraktir anyatra chaisa trika ekakala. Srimad Bhagvatam 11:242. Prabhupada says, this is the test by which one can tell whether he is advancing in devotional service. One must be detached from material enjoyment. Such detachment means that Maya has actually given the conditioned soul liberation from illusory enjoyment. When everyone is under the spell of this illusory enjoyment. Everyone thinks that sense gratification is the ultimate enjoyment, but actually it's an illusory enjoyment because, as we've understood before, there's laws of nature. The law of nature says the more you're addicted to sense gratification, the more you suffer, because sense gratification is always followed by suffering. And most people will reject that idea, but actually it's a law of nature. You cannot reject it. Just like the law of gravity, you cannot ignore it, and you cannot ignore this law of nature. And then it says, when one is advanced in Krishna consciousness, he does not consider himself as good as Krishna. Whenever he thinks that he is the enjoyer of material advantages, he is imprisoned in the bodily conception. So this is the law of nature. As soon as one thinks that he is the enjoyer of material advantages, oh, I have this nice house. Oh, I have this nice car. Oh, I have this nice wife or husband. Oh, I have these nice children. Oh, I have this good job. Oh, I have this good salary. Oh, I have a big 401k. Oh, I have a wonderful stock portfolio. Oh, I'm taking this wonderful vacation. I'm going to enjoy myself. As long as one thinks that he is the enjoyer of material advantages, he's imprisoned in the bodily conception, meaning the false ego. I am this body, I am this mind, I am this intelligence. And when one is freed from the bodily conception, freed from that false ego, then he can engage in devotional service, which is the actual position of freedom from the clutches of Maya. And this is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 20:122. Maya mugda jivera nahi swata Krishna jnana. Jivera kripaya kaila Krishna Veda Purana. The conditioned soul cannot revive his Krishna consciousness by his own effort, but out of causeless mercy, Lord Krishna compiled the Vedic literature and its supplements to Puranas. So, a conditioned soul is bewildered by the illusory energy or Maya, and Maya's business is to keep the conditioned soul forgetful of his real relationship with Krishna. Thus, the living entity forgets his real identity as spirit soul, or Brahman, and instead of realizing his factual position as the eternal servant of Krishna, he thinks himself the product of material energy, according to the Srimad Bhagvatam 1.7.5, Yaya Samhoito Jiva Atmanam Trigunatmakam, and so forth. So due to this external energy, the living entity, although transcendental to the three modes of material nature, thinks of himself as a material product and thus undergoes the reactions of material miseries. This whole thing is unnecessary. It's unnecessary. But yet, by bewilderment, we subject ourselves merrily to this cycle of sense gratification, suffering. Sense gratification, more suffering. Sense gratification, more and more suffering. Sense gratification and constant suffering. See? And we're seeing this right now unfold right in front of our eyes in India and here also, but especially in India, because you cannot engage in sense gratification in India without being zapped, without being seriously affected, because it's the land of Dharma, it's not the land of karma, you see. So, all these things are explained, and the purpose of the Vedic literature, which is specifically given to us by Vyasadeva, the incarnation of Krishna, literary incarnation of Krishna, is to instruct us who is Krishna and how to get out of this cycle of suffering and become determined by magnifying our sense of duty. Now, where is this exactly explained, this sense of duty? It's explained in the last part of the Bhagavad Gita, where it says, Sarvakarmani api sada kurvano mad vyapasrayaha mat prasadat avapnoti sasvatam padam avyayam. Srimad Bhagvatam, Bhagavad Gita, 18th chapter, 56th verse, where it says, though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. So this is our ultimate duty. The word mad vyapasraya means under the protection of the Supreme Lord. To be free from material contamination, a pure devotee acts under the direction of the Supreme Lord or his representative, the spiritual master. There is no time limitation for a pure devotee. He is always 24 hours a day, 100% engaged in activities under the direction of the Supreme Lord. To a devotee who is thus engaged in Krishna consciousness, the Lord is very, very kind. In spite of all difficulties, the devotee, is eventually placed in the transcendental abode or Krishna Loka. He is guaranteed entrance there. There is no doubt about it. In that supreme abode, there is no change. Everything is eternal, imperishable, and full of knowledge. So what is the main point here? It says, in spite of all difficulties, he is eventually placed in the transcendental abode. So we should not be afraid of difficulties if we're a devotee, because it is a test that we must pass. Krishna is testing our sense of duty. And by that test, he wants to magnify our sense of duty. If everything's going all right and you slippery slope into the death valley called sense gratification, your sense of duty also, instead of being magnified, is demagnified. So when there's trouble, when there's difficulty, the devotees naturally become more serious about Krishna consciousness, because they understand cause and effect. They can understand, yes, now I remember I didn't really make any offerings to Krishna. I just ate some food, or I engaged in some sense gratification. I didn't want to do it, but I did it anyway. And so, they can see the correlation, because the result or the reaction for sense gratification will come very quickly for a devotee. For non-devotees, the reaction doesn't come so quickly, so they can't see, they can't correlate. This is happening to me now because I did this then. No, it could be held back for a whole lifetime, and you get the reaction in the next life, right? But for a devotee, you'll get the reaction very quickly. And then you can say, oh my God, I know I should not have done that, and now I'm suffering like this. So the devotee's sense of duty is magnified by difficulties if they're willing to tolerate those difficulties and completely depend on Krishna and become more serious about their rounds, more serious about attending Mangal Arati and hearing the classes. You know, that all that is indicative that Krishna is testing the devotee to see how serious they are. So we should never be afraid of difficulties. And then Krishna says, Chetasa sarvakarmani maya sanyas matpara buddhi yogam upasrita matchita satatam bhava. In all activities, Arjuna, just depend upon me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me. So this end of the Bhagavad Gita, this 18th chapter, is all about the sense of duty. In fact, most of the Bhagavad Gita is talking about this duty that we have to serve the Lord. When one acts in Krishna consciousness, he does not act as the master of the world. Just like a servant, one should act fully under the direction of the Supreme Lord. A servant has no individual independence. He acts only on the order of the master. A servant acting on behalf of the Supreme Master is unaffected by profit and loss. He simply discharges his duty faithfully in terms of the order of the Lord. Now, one may argue that Arjuna was acting under the personal direction of Krishna, but when Krishna is not present, how should one act? If one acts, this is a question we can ask today, right? If one acts according to the direction of Krishna in this book, meaning Bhagavad Gita, as well as under the guidance of the representative of Krishna, then the result will be the same. So if you follow Krishna book, meaning Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna's representative, meaning Guru, both Siksha and Diksha Guru, then, and now let's get this point straight about Siksha and Diksha Guru. This what we explained yesterday morning during the little speech I gave about Jayapataka Maharaj's appearance day. By the way, Jayapataka Maharaj is a very good friend of mine. So, point 3 yesterday of Prabhupada's reply to Jayapataka Maharaj's letter that he wrote sometime in 1972. And Prabhupada's return letter, December 19, 1972, Prabhupada's answering Jayapataka Maharaj's question. And what was his question? Jayapataka Maharaj wrote, I like my engagement of devotional service and feel as if I am very attached to it. Is this an inappropriate attachment? Well, yeah, because the Mayavadis say you have to give up all attachment. Do the devotees say that? No. Devotees don't say you give up all attachment. In fact, you cannot give up attachment. It's natural to be attached to things. But we give up attachment to sense gratification and take up attachment to serving Krishna. You see. So it's whenever it says you have to give up all attachment, it means all material attachments. But the Mayavadis, they do give up all attachment. Attachment to Krishna, attachment to devotional service, attachment to worshiping the deities, attachment to chanting Hare Krishna. They give it all up. But devotees don't do that. So Prabhupada answers, he says, attachment is normal for everyone. Either we are attached to Krishna or to Maya. That's point 2. Point 1, attachment is normal for everyone. Point 2, either we are attached to Krishna or to Maya. Point 3, we become attached to Krishna by serving him with determination and love under the guidance of gurus, shiksha and diksha. There it is right there. So whenever I say shiksha and diksha, because there has been this misunderstanding in ISKCON for a long time that I only take instruction from my diksha guru. I don't take instruction from anybody else. That is nonsense. You see, and people who act like that, they're low-class neophytes. Yes, they are devotees. They are devotees, but they're low-class neophytes or kanista adhikaris. And they're not actually advanced in Krishna consciousness. So they have this, what I would call the grocery man mentality. Just like if there's a small grocery shop on a corner in a neighborhood, well, the man that or the woman that's running the grocery store, they have this small grocery mentality, limited, right? It's not like the supermarket. It's the little grocery, the chota bakkal. Is that right? It's chota bakkal? Isn't bakkal business? Huh? No?
I don't know this word.
No. How do you say shop in Hindi?
Dukan.
Oh, okay, so chota dukani.
Chota means small.
Yeah.
Dukan.
Yeah, chota dukan. Yeah. So, this chota dukan mentality, that's somewhat like the Kanishta Adhikari, who has this very parochial, limited view of what is Krishna consciousness. We should always consider Shiksha and Diksha gurus equal. That's Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, verse number 35. Okay. We become attached to Krishna by serving him with determination and love under the guidance of gurus, Shiksha and Diksha. That's point 3. Point 4, there's 14 points that Prabhupada wrote to Jayapataka Maharaj to answer his question. I'm not going to read all 14. Point 4 is Krishna becomes pleased and appreciates very much when his devotee is attached to him through regulated devotional service performed with enthusiasm. And point 5, the cooperative spirit of working together without argument will lead to success. You will please Prabhupada and Krishna by finishing the service with excellence. So, these are 14 points for success in Krishna consciousness. I'll talk about this some more, but the sense of duty, as explained here, says, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, such acts are called divyam. This means that he does not, does not act or take his birth like an ordinary living being under the custody of material energy, nor is his body material or changeable like that of the ordinary living beings. And one who understands this fact either from the Lord or from authorized sources, that means Siksha and Diksha gurus, is not reborn after leaving the present body. Such an enlightened soul is admitted into the spiritual realm of the Lord and engages in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Therefore, the more we hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord, as they are stated in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagvatam, the more we can know about his transcendental nature and thus make definite progress on the path going back to Godhead. So this is the real explanation of Krishna consciousness. And therefore, while perfect Krishna consciousness, while acting in such a way, one naturally has to think of Krishna. This is perfect Krishna consciousness. One should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. That sort of duty is not in the devotional service of Krishna consciousness. So, if a person whimsically acts without getting the, let's say, the okay from their guru, that the result of that activity will not be satisfactory. One has to always, if one is initiated, they have to always double check their decisions with bona fide guru, Siksha Diksha gurus. If they don't, and they go forward, just like somebody asked me a question a couple days ago, and I told them, don't do this. And they did do it. And they got coronavirus. I told them, don't do it. There was something they wanted to do. I said, don't do it. And they went ahead and did it anyway, and they got coronavirus. And now all the plan they had fell apart completely. They had a big plan, right? But to do that plan, they had to get a corona injection, vaccine. And I said, don't do it. It's not that I said, don't take the vaccine. I said, don't go ahead with your plan, because the plan required getting the vaccine. I said, don't do it. And they didn't listen to me, and then now they have coronavirus, and their whole plan is falling apart. You see? So you cannot act whimsically. This is what destroys one's devotional service, is whimsical acts. You have to have a very high sense of duty and not act independently. So therefore, one should, however, note that after doing something whimsically, he should not offer the result to the Supreme Lord. That sort of duty is not in the devotional service of Krishna consciousness. One should act according to the order of Krishna. This is a very important point. The order of Krishna comes through disciplic succession from the bona fide spiritual master. Therefore, the spiritual master's order should be taken as the prime duty of life. If one gets a bona fide spiritual master and acts according to his direction, then one's perfection of life in Krishna consciousness is guaranteed. This is chapter 18, verse 57 in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, we'll stop right there. I said that I would explain a lot more about the sense of duty, and we may talk about this a little bit more, but this is extremely important for advancement in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Bandhu Mui Savadana Mate Bandhu Mui Savadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai Eva Vatoriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriyaya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Arana Koriya Mane Asa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Utama Gati Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asa Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Asa Chakshudana Dilaje Janne Janme Prabhu se Divya Gyani de Pokasito Prema Bhakti Jahoite Avidya Vinasa Jade Vedega Janara Charito Shiguru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokenath Lokera Jivana Lokenath Lokera Jivana Ha Prabhu Kura Doya De Amore Padachaya Ha Prabhu Kura Doya De Amore Padachaya Ebeyasa Kusukji Bhuvana Om Ebeyasa Kusukji Bhuvana Jaya Prabhupada 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 Oh Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gora Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvachikachasta Tarasatara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parvachikachasta Tarasatara Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vindi Ki Jai. Amacharya Srila Harivilas Thakur. Panish Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakti Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Shamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samavela Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the Son of God. All glories to the Son of God. All glories to the Son of God. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskatya Desatani Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is a perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamani. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Sutta.